there was a thing called Chef, and we produced it for free, and then we stopped producing it for free. And we were happy to see a fork called Sync come into the world that, like, if you want a purely open source version of Chef, you can get one from those people, but not from us. And there people had feelings about that because they'd contributed to Chef, and that was the brand that they had done. And what's a doomed strategy is having a great product that is enterprise quality that anyone can use, that where the price is nothing, that comes from the exact same producer that's then trying to sell you a product at a high ASP.
When we talk about products, I think people often overlook the polish and the ease of use that you expect with a product.
Yes.
And a lot of times people throw the software out, especially in the open source space, and it's a little grungy. It's designed as the pieces parts. It's designed as maybe like Lego blocks or, build your own adventure. And if people get that for free, it's like, oh, that's satisfying. But do you really want to pay for it?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Hacking Open Source Business. I'm one of your co-hosts, Avi Press, and with me we have Matt Yonkovit.
Hello.
And today we have an episode I'm very, very excited for. We have Adam Jacob with us, CEO of System Initiative, founder of Chef, a big open source a thought leader, I'll say, someone who writes a lot about open source online, whose opinions I really admire, and I'm really excited to dig into some of his opinions on open source commercialization. Adam, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm a co-founder of Chef. Chef had lots of daddies. No, don't worry about it. I just want to make sure everybody gets the credit they deserve. Yeah, and I do write a lot about open source. It's always a tough one to be a thought leader. Like, is it like a positive thing or not? Once upon a time, a friend of mine was not paying me a compliment, but she called me the Malcolm Gladwell of DevOps. And I feel like it's a similar kind of backhanded compliment. Like, on the one hand, you're like, I know who Malcolm Gladwell is. That's kind of amazing. And on the other hand, you're like, Malcolm Gladwell's sort of pop science, like, not the most sciencey science you could ever touch in your life. Anyway, thought leader. So
very fair. Yeah, I guess as I was even saying, I don't know the right word to say. No,
thought leader is a fine word. It was a totally fine word. It was absolutely 100% fine.
Why do you insult our guests? Like, I apologize profusely for
Matt's going to take over from here hosting.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. It wasn't actually. I didn't mean to imply you were insulting me. I guess. Anyway, that's me.
Maybe one thing that I can say here that might give more color to what I had in mind when I said this is that I think there's a lot of discussion in the open source world about what companies are doing wrong with this when it comes to open source and why they should just do something differently. And I think then there's the other side, which is like, all like all business all the time and screw open source and there's not a lot in between. I feel like you strike a very good balance of being, very committed to the open source definition and very, the ideals of open source traditionally as they have been developed over a long period of time. But you've also run a successful business, and I think you have a very good takes on kind of balancing those things. And
thank you. I try to. I think Chef as a business, it was pretty successful. I would say in venture capital terms, it was like a solid double. If getting to public markets is a home run, it was almost, maybe it was a triple. It was close anyway, but it didn't happen, which is fine. Just depends on who you are. I had a random stranger on Twitter the other day. Someone asked my opinion about an open source thing, and I gave it. And they were like, "Why are you listening to that guy? He didn't build a sustainable business." And it was like, "Well, I don't know, 75 million or 80 in ARR or whatever, but sure." It all depends. I think what's interesting about it is when you look at that experience for me, we built a great piece of software in Chef. The ecosystem broadly was already moving toward open source software. The incumbents at the time in that market were proprietary, but we weren't. Chef wasn't, Puppet wasn't, CF Engine wasn't. And so, open sourcing it was part of certainly what I believed as an individual engineer, and open source has created my career and created all of the things in my life that, it supported my family. All of those things happens because open source happened for me. And Chef kind of speed ran every open source model possible. We tried everything. And that experience, both good and bad, sort of really made me feel passionately that we had sort of messed it up somehow, like in the end we had, the model that Chef wound up with in the end was very similar to Red Hat's model, which is a thing I think is really misunderstood broadly in the open source ecosystem. But transitioning to that, made everybody quite mad because, there was a thing called Chef and we produced it for free, and then we stopped producing it for free. And we were happy to see a fork called Sync come into the world that, like, if you want a purely open source version of Chef, you can get one from those people, but not from us. And, there people had feelings about that because they'd contributed to Chef and that was the brand that they had done. And so, yeah, I wrote a thing called Sustainable Free and Open Source Communities that was like sfosc.org, that was like trying to figure out how to circle the square of how do you balance the creation of a thriving business and all the different stakeholders with the existence of a thriving community, and how would we think about trying to even design such a thing in a way that could sort of thrive for a long time. And I think over the years it's become more and more clear that separation of the business model, when we talk about open source business models, they're not business models, but we all say that anyway, so it just gets tiring to constantly correct ourselves. And like the business part of open source from what I call the hippie part of open source, the rights part of open source, the what we believe part of open source, that now we're in this interesting moment of tension where I think the business part of open source is starting to kind of threaten the rights part of open source, if that makes sense, in a way that I think is kind of yucky, and I hope we find a way to resolve. But
so I'm curious. You mentioned you made the comment a little bit ago about getting trolled on Twitter or on social, specifically about like, well, I listen to that guy because he doesn't build a sustainable.
Yeah.
So what do people consider sustainable? Because it's interesting, because when I talk with people, they're like, oh, we want to be this, we want to be the next Elastic or Mongo.
Sure.
And you're like, well, they're not really open. So do you?
Yeah.
Do you
I mean,
that?
wouldn't it be great though? I mean, look, MongoDB's killing it, right?
Yeah.
They're rolling in it, and quarter over quarter revenue goes up year over year, 40%, 1 point whatever billion dollars in ARR. Like MongoDB's killing it. So, look, it's all relative. I can't put I don't know what that person was thinking. They're like a CEO of a security startup. I've never met them. They just sort of crawled into my mentions and talked shit. Sorry, can I swear?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can't swear. What the hell?
No, sometimes you can't. Sometimes I go.
We'll call bullshit if there's bullshit to be called.
I'm gonna swear a lot if you let me. So.
We'll let you swear as much
freely.
as you want.
Yeah, please.
I don't know what particular thing. I don't think that anything I did necessarily had annoyed that person. You know what I mean? I was just I was a prop for whatever they were already upset about. I think, but ultimately, in the venture world, there's a real danger of, the game we're playing exclusively is the big one. So like, what's a successful venture capital backed startup? Like, one answer is like, well, do you have an exit? Another answer is just, do you get to be one at all? Like the percentage who seek venture capital and receive it is quite low. I think it's like 8%, lower maybe, of all companies that try to get venture capital actually get any. And then is that not success? Like obviously it doesn't mean your business is a success, but like you did do a thing that most people can't do, like just that alone was actually kind of impressive. And then it's like, well, did you make $1? Because that's kind of impressive too, because a lot of them never do. And then, did you make $1 million? Because if you've never made $1 million in revenue before, it's hard to make $1 million in revenue. And then you make $1 million in revenue and you're like, oh my gosh, like I made $1 million in revenue, and now you got to make 10. And then you get to 10 and you're like, oh my God, now there's 10. And like, there's a lot of work that goes into all of those decisions and that whole shape, all of which to some degree or another is sort of out of the control of the people who built the product. Like I build whatever I build. I do my best to build something that other people will love. I don't control whether you like it. I don't control whether or not it's going to work for you. Like, ultimately you do. You have to pick it up and be like, this was great software. This solves my problem. I want to use it. I enjoy it. You know, it makes me happy. I don't control any of the rest of that. And so, like, I think to me, what the success factor there is more about how you went about doing the work, and how you behaved with the people around you, and what the product was that you brought into the world. And I feel very successful on those fronts. Did I, if you compare my success to, HashiCorp's success, HashiCorp, similar industry, went public, now got sold to IBM as of like an hour ago or whatever. Like, billions of dollars of wealth was generated for everybody who was involved. That's amazing. If we're measuring by the dollar outcomes of what we returned, like, I was a success too, but I'm not like that. Like, Mitchell's in his airplane and I'm not,
well, so do you have an airplane?
It's all relative.
Adam?
No, I don't have an airplane. No, I wouldn't want one.
I was just asking because, you're not like in your airplane now. You can interpret that many different ways.
I feel like that's how, anyway, I'm worried about Mitchell for the airplane. I feel like all I ever hear about with people in tiny planes is how they die. Anyway, I'm sure he's going to be fine. But
we hope
anyway,
he's fine.
Yeah, yes. I like Mitchell. I didn't mean to turn it dark. But
yeah, that turned really dark really quick.
But I think when you think about relative success, I think, in venture capital, a lot of people can look at it and say, well, you're only a success if your company goes public and is enduring. HashiCorp just sold to IBM. Was it not sustainable? Like, it's an insane thing to say it wasn't sustainable. That's insane.
It's just like the wrong word to use, I feel like, in this context. It's just fabulously, not the right word.
It's fabulously wrong. But it is the word that everyone uses. Like, if you're going to rug pull, the word you use here is, well, it wasn't sustainable.
Well, it's interesting because from a sustainability perspective, when you are either in the business space or in the more pure open source, kind of like you mentioned, the hippie, open source space, they both use the exact same term, but mean something completely different.
Dramatically different things. But the business side loves to conflate the two because it's a lot better than being like, well, we didn't make enough money. Like, when you say I'm rolling in dollars and I wish I was rolling in a bigger pile of dollars, it's not particularly sympathetic, like, but when you say it wasn't sustainable, well, that's different. Now it's like, oh, I see what you mean. Like, there were a lot of people that used Terraform and didn't pay me. I wish there were more. That doesn't seem fair. And like, okay, fair enough. Like, that's true. And it is in fact a business problem when you get to a certain level of saturation. Like, when you look at the serviceable addressable market and the TAM, and you get to a total addressable market, the total number of people who could buy your product, right, times the average price they pay, and then serviceable addressable market, the people inside that market who could actually use the product because you meet their needs, times the average price they pay, and then the serviceable obtainable market, the number you actually convert of who's possible.
Well, wait. Most people, especially, a lot of people that I've talked to, they're like, well, wait a minute, I got 10 billion downloads, so I have 10 billion users. So you're meaning that doesn't work? Like,
well, it's interesting. The problem is that if that TAM math, so this is how you do basic business modeling, right? So business modeling 101, just how big can your business ever possibly be? The math says is really straightforward. It's like just multiplication. It's total number of possible people who could buy your product multiplied by the average price that they will pay. That is your total addressable market. That's the biggest your business could ever be. So if we open a donut shop and there's 100 people who could come buy our donuts and the average person spends $5 on donuts, then $500 is the most we'll ever make in our donut shop. There's nothing we could do that would do better than that. But we know we won't sell to all 100 of them. So, right, like, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So, like, when one thing that open source companies do wrong is when they're looking at the SAM, so the total addressable market's one thing, but then they're looking at the SAM, there's two sides to the equation. There's how much do I pay, how much do they pay, and how many of them are there. So open source can accelerate your ability to get more people into that SAM and SOM part of the ring, the inner rings of the business model. But most of them are paying nothing. which drives the average price down. So the right-hand side of the equation gets lower. So the average selling price of the software goes down. And what we love to do to counteract that is to just pretend those people don't exist. So we just go, oh, that's not actually, they don't actually count for determining the average selling price, right? We cut them out. They're in a different category. And that little magic trick is how we fool ourselves into believing it's all going to be fine. And so at scale, you get to HashiCorp, and they get to a level of market saturation where how many people who need HashiCorp's tools don't know about HashiCorp, right? Most of them know. Not many. And so then you start saying, well, growth is slowing down. Where do we find new growth? Well, we either launch new products, right? Which they do, but there's no guarantee that your new products are as big a hit as the old ones, right? They got 2 home run products, Terraform and Vault. That's 2 more than most people ever get. So amazing. The others are some variation of pretty good, right? Or okay. And then you get a little squeezed. You're like, well, now I need to I need to raise the right hand part of the number. I need to raise the price. How do I raise the price? Well, most people are paying 0. So if I get the people who are paying 0 to pay me $1,000, suddenly my growth isn't slowing. It's accelerating. And so what do? Well, we got to stop giving it to you for nothing. Like, I got to stop giving it to you for free. And that's actually the crux of the business sustainability problem in open source, is that like when we're analyzing those business models and when we're looking at how big can my business become and how does the business side work, the risk is that we drive that ASP too low. And we're not clear about who we market to and who we don't, and who provides what value and to whom and for how many dollars.
But I guess that basically seems to say that a lot of these open source businesses are basically doomed from the start. Or maybe that, they always are going to have this very low sales price.
I wouldn't say that they're doomed. I would say that they're a little kneecapped in their ASP that, so like you look at Chef, for example, my own experience, the incumbent software providers, BladeLogic and Opsware, their average selling price was probably 3 to 5 times what Chef's final average selling price was for shittier software. And that I ruined those businesses, right? Like most people don't run BladeLogic or Opsware anymore, haven't for a long time. Between me and Puppet and CF Engine, we ran those dudes out on a rail, and we did it at 3 to 5 times less than their revenue was, and none of us went public. And so, are we successful or failures? It's interesting, right? Because we were bigger businesses than either by number of customers, by number of people who used it, by impact on the industry. We kicked the crap out of BladeLogic and Opsware, but as businesses who made dollars, did worse. Pretty hard to overcome 3 to 5 times lower ASP.
Yeah,
that's a lot of people I don't have to reach to get to the same number, right?
That reminds me of a quote, though, and I just wanted to throw this out there from Martin Mikos, who used to say, our job isn't to steal the $1 million Oracle deals; it's to take the $1 million Oracle deals and turn them into $100,000, MySQL deals.
And God bless Martin, but that kind of looks dumb, because Oracle's still Oracle.
Yeah, they still are 18 billion.
And you know what MySQL's not? Oracle.
Yep.
So I don't know.
Well, actually, they are now. But
they are now, which is awful, right? It's awful. But of course they are, because one of them makes a ton of money and the other one doesn't. And I think it's a very uncomfortable realization once you realize that it's true. And now that I've told you, you won't be able to unsee it. And so when you think about the business sustainability side of this argument, that's what they're talking about. And that's why you see people rug pulling when they get bigger, because as you get closer to saturation, it starts to matter more. And when you're small, it doesn't. But when you're big, it does. And so figuring out how to align those things so that doesn't happen is sort of the thing I'm most interested in right now. But it is what happens.
So the broader question that that obviously makes me want to ask is okay, but what is the answer here then? But I think that's such a broad question that maybe we pare this down a bit. And go ahead if you
go ahead.
Okay. I think a more specific question that we can ask, which might be a more tractable way to guide the discussion then, is maybe if you can kind of introduce system initiative a little bit, and let's talk about like what are you doing differently here? Like you are starting you have an open source business.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're just talking about why that's a doomed strategy.
Well,
so
I don't think,
answer?
Yeah, just so we're clear, it's not a doomed strategy. What's a doomed strategy is having a great product that is enterprise quality that anyone can use, that where the price is nothing, that comes from the exact same producer that's then trying to sell you a product at a high ASP. That's a dumb strategy. Like if think about it, like you podcast people, you can't see this, but there's a beautiful wall of hats behind Matt. And if all of those hats were free hats, if he could go to the free hat place and just take it, or he could buy it for money, do you think he buys them or goes to the free hat place? Like, I think he goes to the free hat place. And there'll be some people who are like, I love those hats. And if everybody goes to the free hat place, there won't be any more hats. And so they like go to the other place because they have disposable income or whatever. And they feel like tipping you. And so they're like, okay, every fifth hat, I'll throw you a bone, you know? But like, that's essentially what we're doing most of the time and this is why you see like Linkerd. That's what Linkerd did. And that's why they changed their behavior so that now they don't make stable builds anymore. And if you want a stable build, you have to pay for Linkerd. And suddenly they're popping a bunch more revenue, unshockingly, because they built a great product that solved real problems that people really needed. And then they gave it away for nothing, the exact same product that they produced. That's dumb. And, when we look at what to do differently, it is a little situational. So like in System Initiative's case, I'm starting System Initiative from scratch. The business model is relatively straightforward. We produce open source software exclusively. So all the software that's in System Initiative is open source. None of it's proprietary. I'm going to sell it as a SaaS. I'm going to let you run it on-prem. I'm going to do all that stuff. And if you get it from me, then you're getting a product called System Initiative. So there's the software, System Initiative software. There's the product, System Initiative. If you want either of those things from me, you get it from me under my commercial terms. So there's no way to get it from me where you don't have to pay me money. If you would like to get it from someone else, they can take the software and build hat. And that's fine. And then you can decide, do you want to get it from hat or do you want to get it from System Initiative? And the hat folks, whoever it is that decides to do that, like, I hope they come and work with us and collaborate on System Initiative and make it better and push that product better into the market. And I'm going to compete with them. Like, we'll compete with each other for those customers and for those users. And, but I'm going to be the best of the world at selling System Initiative and building System Initiative for the hardest problems on the planet. And I'm going to be better at doing that with the software I build and the software my team builds and the software I collaborate with the hat people I'm building. So it's all open source. You can do whatever you want with it. The only thing you can't do with it is call it System Initiative unless you pay me.
So this is one thing that I want to dig into a little bit because I feel like it's a really important point of the strategy. I don't feel like it's talked about very much, which is your trademark.
Yes.
And how the trademark, I don't know, ties into the commercial model of this. Why is that a good strategy in your opinion?
Yeah. So you got three different levers you can use to sort of create terms, if you will. I'm not a lawyer, but I hang out with them. And there's essentially, I'm like a weird open source lawyer fanboy. Hi, open source lawyers. Okay. So look, so there's three different.
Do you have posters of certain lawyers on your wall? I'm just asking.
No, but I would.
You would? Okay.
I really
so
would.
If we get the lawyers of open source action figures, you're going to totally be
I would 100% buy them. Yeah, it'd be amazing. I'd be thrilled. Like, give me a Kyle Mitchell action figure. I'd use it all the time. Okay, so I would literally play with it. It'd be so fun. That would make Kyle Mitchell so uncomfortable. Okay, look, Pam Chestic and Kyle Mitchell could like have a little open source. It would be so fun. I'm getting way too inner nerd for this podcast.
No, this is perfect, actually.
But
maybe
it would
Kyle
be really
listen to this.
I hope Pamela does listen to it. It would be really funny. Anyway, okay, so Three levers: trademarks, copyright, and patents. When you license the software, and the other thing you have to understand for the strategy to make sense to you is the difference between software and products. So a product is a thing that you receive from someone else that solves a problem for you. For example, I have a guitar behind me, two guitars actually. You can't see them, podcast people, but there's two guitars behind me. Those are products. I didn't build the guitar. I didn't guitar strings are available to me. Wood is available to me. Frets are available to me. Pickups are available to me. I did not build the guitar out of piece parts. I went and bought one, right? I went to ESP and said that one, right? I built a product. I bought a product, right? The microphone I'm using, same thing. It's a product. I wanted it to exist in my life in a way that I could consume. Kleenex, product, right? Software is not a product, right? Software is closer to the piece parts of the guitar, right? As engineers, as people who make a living, in the same way that like to a luthier, the idea of paying good money, I'm overpaying for my guitars. Do you see what I mean? Like a luthier could build a better guitar than either of the guitars behind me because they have the skill to put it together and they could find the best parts and they could put together the exact perfect guitar just for them. That's the equivalent of a software engineer, right? What we do for a living is we take software as piece parts and we make the software do our bidding. So when we look at the value of a software product, which is a thing that I can run, other normal people, mortals can use. JP Morgan Chase can install and run that software. Disney can use it. Your mom can use it, depending what your mom does for a living. That joke's going to wear out because now there's a bunch of moms who work in technology, right? So, those are products. Engineers tend to get it conflated because to them, all they need is the software, right? I'm running Arch Linux as my desktop. It's fine because I'm an engineer. But if and I want it that way. But if I wasn't an engineer, I don't. I just need a Mac, right? Because the product just works. Everything runs. It's all integrated. Everything about it's better. Like it's a product, right? What people buy are products. That's it. IntelliJ, it's a product. You buy it, right? Because it's finished. It's all together. And they never tell you to figure it out for yourself. NeoVim, not a product. Why? Not really. Well, because it mostly tells you to do it yourself. It like shows up and it's like, yeah, you put together your list, build the lightsaber, which is precisely what I do. I love NeoVim. But it's not a product for most people, right? It's focused in it. It's just me. So,
and I think it's a really good point because when we talk about products, I think people often overlook the polish and the ease of use that you expect with a product.
Yes.
And a lot of times people throw the software out, especially in the open source space, and it's a little grungy. It's designed as the pieces parts. It's designed as maybe like Lego blocks or, build your own adventure. And if people get that for free, it's like, oh, that's satisfying. But do you really want to pay for it? Some people will, but not many.
Some people will, but most people won't. So then you got these three layers: patents, trademarks, copyright. So the reason this is a good strategy, because that's where this question started, and now you're learning about me that I'm a person who runs on. The reason it's a good strategy is those three levers can be applied in lots of different ways. So the copyright strategy, when you license your software under, like, let's say the Apache license, you're using copyright to say that this software is under the Apache license terms, that anyone can make a derivative work, you can't change the license, all of those things, right? You're explicitly not granting someone access to your trademark. So a trademark is the identity by which I recognize a particular company or distributor or person as a product is coming from them, right? You can't call Kleenex Kleenex. Only Kleenex can call Kleenex Kleenex, right? Everybody else has to call it tissue, right? That's because Kleenex is a brand of tissues. Right, I have a guitar behind me that's an ESP Eclipse Mark II that has the same body style as a Gibson Les Paul. They can't call it the ESP Les Paul, right? Because even though it's the ESP Les Paul, right? Les Paul is a trademark that exists to recognize that particular guitar as a thing that belongs to Les Paul. And it represents the quality of that product, how it was manufactured, all the things that go into its creation, the team that built it, the support they gave it, the service you receive, the way you consume it, how it's marketed, all that stuff is related to your trademark. And then you have patents, which are whatever secret sauce you might have come up with. and you can say, hey, this patent, only I am allowed to make this thing this way, right? I could have a patent on the way that pickups are wound in my guitar, or at Chef, I had a patent on building a dry run mode that didn't lie to you. It's called Y run mode. And so like in theory, I could have sued anybody who built a dry run mode that didn't lie to them. I didn't, but you could have, right? And so that's another way you sort of can think about protecting your business. So most of the time when we open source things, we think about copyright exclusively. We say, I put a license on the software, and now the software goes into the world under the same terms that I licensed it. So that's called license in, license out. So when I build a distribution, a binary you download, what license are you receiving that binary under? Most of the time in open source, it's the license that the software is under, Apache, GPL, MPL, whatever. But you don't have to do that. Yeah. Most of these licenses allow you to build distributions of differing licenses. So for example, System Initiative is Apache 2 licensed. That allows me to build a commercial distribution that's not licensed under the Apache license under whatever terms I desire. So I actually do use copyright to do it. The other thing I do is I don't grant you trademark use at all. So I'm very restrictive about who's allowed to use the System Initiative trademark and how. And in particular, you're only allowed to use it if you're me. So you're not allowed to build the software that has my trademarks inside of it. If you do, then you're actually in violation of my trademark. And so whoever wants to build HAT is going to have to come in and figure out how to strip all the System Initiative trademarks out of the software, which is fine. I will happily take that piece and we'll go do it. What that lets me do is say my product that I sell can only come from me. That brand belongs to me. There's value in it. And as we take that software into the world and we turn it into a transformative piece of software that everybody loves, the open source piece of it accelerates my brand into the world. It helps the product that we produce to get more widespread, and it lets me segment who takes care of which piece of the market. Because when you think about the people who will pay nothing for System Initiative, and there will be people who will pay nothing for System Initiative, some of those people I want using System Initiative, brand System Initiative, and they can live in my like free tier. And that's great. But some people won't want to live in that free tier. And what I want is to ignore those people largely, unless they're talking to me about the software. If what you want is a finished product that you can just consume, somebody else can serve that market segment. Yeah. And I don't mind who those people, I want those people to exist, because if they do, then my software serves that segment too. I just don't want them to be my problem, because what I serve is the broader enterprise market. Like that's where I'm going to sell and make all my money. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And it's a really good point, because this is something that I think that a lot of companies and founders get wrong is, what's your market? Everyone. Right. And I think that that's a challenge. And what you're saying really is, you have identified who you want as your customers, and you're okay with having other companies pick up the rest. You love it because it helps you.
I'm thrilled, because that's how we build an actual community. So, the difference between fandom and community, like you can be a fan of whatever. I'm a fan of Marvel Comics, but I'm not in the Marvel Comics community. You know what I mean? Like, because I don't get to decide what happens to Wolverine, right? If it was up to me, we'd still be living in the X-Men in the 90s, late 80s, even better. And like, I like, but I don't get to choose that, because it's not mine. It's theirs, obviously, right? If you love MongoDB, you're not in the MongoDB community in the same way that you could be in the Chef community, because if you picked up that software and changed your life with it, and one way people change their lives with software is through using it to make money. That is an intensely different bond and a very different relationship to the software and to the brand than simply loving the outcome. Does that make sense? And like, so when you think about why open source works for like a HashiCorp, people loved HashiCorp. They use that software, Terraform, they use that software to change their lives. It made a significant delta in the shape and trajectory of their career, just like they did with Chef. And that doesn't really happen so much with commercial software, right? With purely proprietary software. Like, there's something special about being able to take that software and create a life with it that that matters when you think about how big and how much acceleration you can get from our businesses. And so you have to align that truth with creating the space that allows other people to find a way to profit. And what the current crop of businesses tend to do is chop that part off in order to eliminate competition, instead of figuring out how to make sure that that competition lifts them up.
I feel like I have a dozen questions I could ask kind of after that, but maybe one to start is, so on this trademark point here. So the idea that I'm trying to think of how to actually phrase this. So at the very beginning, when you're getting started, there is no value to this trademark, to this brand, because it didn't exist before yesterday. And over time, that becomes something that's more and more valuable. And that's kind of a part of why the product versus the software are different, and why there is more value to be, given around the software. Like the product has value because the brand has value, because, you're putting it all packaged together.
The software has to be good.
The software has to be good.
How do we produce it? All that stuff matters. Yeah.
Right. But I guess what I mean is, like, these things kind of start from being the same in how much value they provide. And then over time, that gap will increase as your brand becomes more and more, widely recognized, a reputation. But I guess the question here that I'm getting at is, it's very nuanced how this is different from OpenCore, in the sense that there's kind of there is value being added somewhere, but it's in kind of a web of different places. And so maybe can you talk a little about why you think this is fundamentally better than OpenCore?
So yummy. Yes, of course I will. Okay, so OpenCore is essentially saying, I produce something of value, usually high value. So we'll use Chef again as an example. So the high value thing that Chef did was configure your servers. And so if you think about what's in my open source piece, and then OpenCore says, now there's a proprietary layer that you can't have unless you pay me money. So there's something else that does it. So that's another attempt at market segmentation, right? It's saying, hey, people in the enterprise need role-based access control, or they need better monitoring or better reporting, or they need, whatever this feature is. And you put those things behind a paywall with a different license. And then that's your OpenCore strategy, right? So the trouble with OpenCore starts with the fact that the core has to be quite good. So when we think about value and how much people think about paying for something, they do think about relative value. So what Chef did was configure all your servers. There was enough functionality in Chef open source to automate all of the compute at Facebook. Every data center, every laptop, all of it. It's all run in Chef. Has been forever. For a long time now. And that's amazing. They didn't need to pay $1 to do that. Yeah? They could take my open source thing and do it, because if they couldn't, they would never have used it in the first place. So then the OpenCore thing kicks in. You're like, well, you know what Facebook really needs? Do they need better reporting? Nope. They have better reporting than I'll ever build. Do they need better, do they need a better web UI? Nope. They don't want one anyway. Do they need a better, what's the list? What's my feature? And then when you finally figure out, what is the thing that you're like, oh, but you do need this thing. And they're like, yeah, okay, I suppose I do. Now you're like, well, how much are you willing to pay for it? And they're like, well, not a lot, because my starting place was 0 for the incredible thing you already gave me. So what are the odds that whatever the thing is you put in the OpenCore is so compelling that you're like, oh, you know what? And so what every company in OpenCore tries to do is recapture the value of the open part in selling the proprietary part. But you just get beat up when you wind up in a procurement meeting where they're like, look, I could just do this for free. I could re-implement whatever the feature is. I could live without it. And all of that is what you can do. Why the strategy I'm proposing is better is that if you want the software from me, you have to pay me for its value, because I build a product that you can consume, that you want. And if you want it, you have to pay me for all of the value. If you don't, great, but you have to figure out where to get it. You have to figure out how to build it. You have to figure out how to secure it. You have to figure out where the supply chain comes from. You got to figure out who the engineers will be and how they're going to run the roadmap. You got to figure out how you want to market it and sell it, how you want to document it. You got to figure out how you're going to run the services. You figure out all that stuff and you don't have to pay me. Or you could pay me. And that moment, I get to create and capture more of the value for what I've done. A good example here is OpenShift. Red Hat are the masters of this. OpenShift makes over $1 billion in ARR. They're as big or bigger than MongoDB. They're twice the size of HashiCorp. They sell nothing but open source software as a product. That's it. They took a bunch of open source software, they put it together in a product that's well integrated, that's supported, that you can run and maintain, and they sell it to the enterprise. You could run stock Kubernetes. There's a bunch of other free Kubernetes distributions. You could run those too. But you don't, because OpenShift is great and it comes from a trusted brand and it know what to do. And so they charge a high price for it. OpenShift is not cheap. OpenShift is quite expensive because they get to capture all the value that goes into the creation of OpenShift because they refuse to give it to you if you don't buy it. And you can go download it right now. You can go to OKD and you could download what is exactly the same as OpenShift, but you don't. Because you don't know who OKD is, even though it's mostly Red Hat, but you're unwilling to do it. So like, that's why the strategy is better. In OpenCore, what you wind up having to do is negotiate this balancing point between how much do I keep proprietary, which your salespeople are going to be like, oh, I need more in the bag, more in the bag, more in the bag, more proprietary, because they're always going to lose a deal. And then the community, which is like, I can't believe you held back authentication, which is like Elasticsearch, right? They were like, you can use it for free, but you can't auth. And we're like, for real? And then they got super mad at the people that made it so you could auth, right? They were like, there was like a finger waggy lawsuit. It was the whole thing. That sucks. It's awful. It's terrible. It's bad for the community. It's bad for business. It's not better. It's worse. And you can avoid it by just not doing it, by simply deciding that what you're going to do is sell the product for money. We just don't. It's weird.
But I guess what is the primary thing that's driving the initial couple of sales then, where that differentiation is just not very wide?
No.
And
it's quite wide. Like today, let's say you want System Initiative. You think what it does is amazing. Yeah. There's only one way to get it, and that's to accept it under my commercial terms, which has a very generous free tier, and then you have to convert to paying me. Or you can figure out how to get it yourself. But you probably made
it pretty easy, right? Like I go to your GitHub, I download the thing, I follow some build instructions, and I'm probably up and running pretty quick, right?
Sure. But I didn't make it easy to run it in production. I'm making it easy to run it in production for myself, but not for you. Like I don't need any of those things. You as a software engineer, you're like, I could run System Initiative. Absolutely, you could. It's incredible. You check out the source code, you run buck2 dev:up, you hit enter, and this whole distributed system just boots and does the needful. It's awesome.
So that's super easy, right?
Super
so like why
easy.
So why
you know who's not going to do that?
Who?
JP Morgan Chase. Disney. Pets.com. Apple. LaCroix. Ford.
So the approach here,
that's who I sell them to. I'm not selling it to you.
Okay.
Like I don't like what I want you to do it. I want you to use it. That'd be great. But when you wind up running a company or wind up having your company use it, most likely you're going to be like, you know what we should do? We should probably buy this from the System Initiative guys, because they got a bunch of software developers who are really good at it. Like they kind of know what to do. Like maybe we should buy System Initiative brand System Initiative. And that'll be great. Or you won't. You'll be like, you know what we should do? We should start the consortium of people who make hat. And then we'll get it from hat. And I'll be like, great. And I'll talk to you all day as long as we're talking about the software and not about how to use it. But as soon as you come to me and you're like, oh man, I'm running hat and I'm struggling to figure out how to do blah, 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 I'm going to be like, you should talk to the hat people. Like, that sounds like a hat problem. But like, if you'd like to talk to me about it, that'd be great. You should become a system initiative customer. And now we can talk about your problems. Because you bought my product, right? Because it's valuable.
And, I mean,
from
this is
the day we started.
I mean, and this is classically like what a lot of companies started in the open source space with, which was providing value around, like you mentioned, the product, and I think
Yeah.
when we talk about like being better than the others, I think that's something that's often overlooked. And there's multiple ways to do that. Some people do it on services, some people do it on software, some people do it,
the number one mistake that got made by everyone who tried to copy those early moments, I think Red Hat got here by accident, just so we're clear, is that they offer you a version of it for nothing. And like usually what happens is there's a $0 version you can download. And this was people saying, oh, we sell support. Again, if what you sell is support, that's a losing business because the value prop of support is low. The value prop starts with, does it break? And if it break, you're selling insurance. And like, that'd be great if you needed it, but you don't. If the software's good, you don't need it. And so of course it doesn't pay very well, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like, you want the software, so you pay me for it in the same way that, if you want to use IntelliJ, you buy IntelliJ. If you want to use Figma, you pay for Figma. And there's no difference here. And that distinction of like early open source, part of how I think historically we got this wrong was that engineer brain that's like, well, the value is the software. And if there's not something else that you're giving me as an engineer, I don't care. This was like the argument we made to not buy Red Hat. And we were like, let's use Debian. And like, we could do that because we had 24 systems administrators who were incredible, but most companies couldn't. They all just bought Red Hat, Anyway.
So what do you say to I think one narrative that I hear a lot with Scarf customers, especially that are like kind of struggling with, or not necessarily struggling, but often struggling with various, commercialization challenges is that we are competing against our open source.
Yeah.
We're competing against free.
Against ourselves.
Right. And it almost seems like what you are saying is like, well, not really. Or it doesn't really matter in practice.
Well, it depends on how you structure your business.
Right.
I think if you're competing against a product you produce that has 90+% of your product's value and the core of its value at 0, that fucking sucks. So
what's the answer?
Don't do that anymore. Stop it. Stop hitting yourself. And
right.
and be great, be comfortable. Who cares? Like I can't wait for System Initiative to be successful enough that there's a fork. That sounds amazing because I want there to be one, because it means that there's a market of people who care about System Initiative like I care about System Initiative, and that they want something from their own lives, and I want them to come work with me to make that thing that we both love better. And they can even try to compete with me directly on they could be like, I want the exact same business model Adam does. I'm going to copy the whole thing. I'm going to sell it for the exact same amount of money. I will win anyway because I'm great at this, and I'm going to build a company that's good at it. And if I can't outcompete you on my own commercial product, what am I going to do? Now, if I choose not to, it's not like I'm choosing not to get competed with. Of course, if I'm successful, I'm going to have competition, and it's only going to get worse the bigger I get. The more successful I become, the more competition I invite. So the question is, will that competition be pushing forward my technology and my brand and my standard and pushing my SAM bigger like open source does? Or will we be fighting it out over features, over implementation, over a bunch of different things? And like, if I can do it, I'd much rather have a market that's essentially downstream of me, where we're collaborating on the parts that make sense. If it's different, it's different. But like, every single dollar that goes to the hat distribution of System Initiative is a dollar that could come to me, right? Every single user that's there, that's a user that's already ready to come to me, right? And all I have to do is stay good at what I do and be ready when that moment comes and be able to capture that value. And like, but the art of it is that you have to allow other people to thrive. You have to just make the space that says, yes, you're allowed to. Not only are you allowed to, I want you to. Because that's how we become a big ecosystem that thrives and runs together. And yeah, that's it.
Very, very well wrapped up.
Couldn't be simpler.
So easy. Just be world class at what you do.
Which, for the record, is the thing that's in your way anyway.
Right. Yeah.
It's not like if you build something that's not great and then open source it, what's going to happen is it's going to win. It won't. right? Like it has to be great. Like that's the hardest part of this. It's not open source strategy. The hardest part is being great. Like MongoDB didn't execute, I think, the most efficient business strategy they could have. I think they could have a bigger business if they'd followed my advice. That's incredible hubris to say. And I recognize the level of hubris in saying it, but I believe that it is true. And they're not crying in their beer. You know, they're not sitting wherever they are being like, oh, we could have been $2.5 billion. You know, like it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Because if the product is great, the rest of this really doesn't matter from a business point of view. It'll find a way.
So we like to wrap things up with a rapid fire round of questions.
Okay, I'll answer quicker, I promise.
Well, so these, are generally, 782 selected questions.
All right.
So, and we try to get them all in 5 minutes.
Okay, let's do it.
Yes. So I see that you have a superhero holding up the books behind you.
Yes.
Who is it? What is it?
It's just a book holder. He looks kind of Superman-y. He's holding up a bunch of X-Men omnibus.
Okay, so the question is, you have a dinosaur on your shelf, the Superman guy, and Kermit the Frog. They're in a battle royal. Who wins?
Kermit the Frog.
Okay, and why?
Whoa.
Because he's Kermit the Frog. Because he can't. He literally can't lose. If you think about this from a story point of view, there's no version of this where Kermit the Frog is eaten by a fucking dinosaur. That's just not how it goes down. Like Kermit the Frog survives.
This is true.
Kermit the Frog wins. I don't know how he wins, but he does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Love that.
So, favorite X-Men storyline?
Oh, when Storm loses her powers and she is and then Cyclops is like going a little nuts and he's like having a relationship with Madeline Pryor and they wind up fighting for leadership of the X-Men in the Danger Room. And a fully powered Cyclops loses to a completely depowered Storm, and she just whips his ass. That's my favorite single issue of the X-Men of all time.
Ah, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Recommend a book for us on your shelf.
Oh, that's on my shelf. I mean, since we started with the X-Men, Uncanny X-Men Volume 1, I think another would be Rick Rubin's book, The Creative Act, which I think is probably the most useful guide to both being a software developer, but also thinking about how to model successful organizations that build software. Because I think software is art, not factories.
Okay, so you mentioned you have guitars behind you.
Yeah.
Favorite guitar riff of all time? Like, is there a song or something that's just like?
The one I like to play the most is AC/DC's Sin City, and then the intro to a Tesla song.
Okay.
Called "Song and Emotion." Yeah.
Okay, and what is your favorite open source tool that you're using on a daily basis?
Oh, that he's on a daily Vim.
Vim.
NeoVim.
Okay. And do you have a favorite Linux distro?
Yeah, right this second it's Arch on my desktop, but if I was like picking to run a server, no. I probably should, but I kind of don't.
Okay. All right. Well, it wasn't quite the 187 questions, but I think that was a good rapid fire, just to get to know you a little bit more, Adam.
Yeah.
Avi, any final words from you?
No, I mean, I think, Adam, thank you so much again for coming and sharing some of your thoughts on open source commercialization generally. I have heard that you are writing more stuff on this topic. And so I feel like we could have had a much longer conversation and maybe we can find some time for a round two.
I mean, I'd love to do that. I'm trying to figure out how to talk about it and how to write it down. I feel like, separating, I'm learning that the more I separate the open source values part from the business conversation, the easier it is to talk about business models, and the easier it is to talk about values, and sort of why those values matter to the business model later on. But I'm still kind of playing with, how do I analyze all the different scenarios and all the different situations so that I can actually explain to someone like, here's all the puts and takes of all the different strategies. Here's how you can sort of express them in the language of business. I don't know how long it's going to take me to be able to do that, or if the form it takes is me writing things. Like right now, the form is that it's like 40 pages in my notebook, but like, does that become 40? Does it become like a written thing? Does it become, I don't know. Do I do a series of like YouTube tutorials where I'm like a weird professor? I don't know. But
Well, we're excited to see how that does come to light.
Yeah. In the
I
meantime,
guess just
I'll talk to anybody who wants to talk to me about it. So I'm not hard to find.
Is there anything else that you want to plug for to the audience, or any other messages you want to get out there?
I mean, System Initiative is going to be very cool. It should be stable come summer. So, you can actually use it for production workloads, I hope, by then. And you should try when it's ready, because it's dope. Yeah.
Cool. All right, everyone, that will do it for us this time. Thanks so much for watching. Please hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll see you next time.